Good afternoon. We'll call to order the special meeting of the Diversion Board here on February 6th, 4 o'clock, and we'll have Don take the roll.
Mayor Carlson.
Here.
Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Mayor Mahoney. Mr. Breitling.
Here.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn. Mr. Ebbinger.
Here.
Ms. Kolpak.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mr. Capitan.
Here.
Mr. Grimberg.
Here.
Mr. Steen.
Here.
And Ms. Morgan.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you, Don. Look for a motion to approve the order of the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Item 3, I believe we have Mr. Shockley online.
Yes, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes. Proceed.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to present to you the draft or the consulting agreement with Jody Smith to serve as a consultant with the Diversion Authority regarding a matter of items, and I'll briefly get into that. The board may be aware that Ms. Smith had accepted a position with the state of North Dakota as an interim executive director. In her role, she also would like to continue, as would the authority, assisting the authority primarily with finishing the negotiations for the eminent domain. She's been a big part of that action for the land acquisition and going through the eminent domain action. And so with the assistance of Deputy Executive Director Robert Wilson, we spent a significant amount of time and worked through an agreement with her. You'll see in section 2.01 of the agreement, and I'll just summarize what her duties would be. She would primarily assist with the ongoing negotiations relating to land acquisition, primarily with Cass County Joint Water Resource District and the MCC JPA. That's negotiating with the landowners and their attorneys and bringing those hopefully finalized negotiations back to the respective boards for approval. She would also be reporting to the executive director regarding performance under the contract. She'd be coordinating with legal counsel and continue to provide some work on the environmental monitoring easement issues and forest mitigations and some other matters. The compensation would be $12,000 flat fee for a period of 6 months for each. So it'd be $12,000 per month. And that'd be February through July. And that was chosen primarily because the bulk of the remaining negotiations would occur during those months. Any time that she'd spend after that, after August 1st, she would be paid at a rate of $130 per hour and get reimbursed for any of her expenses. And this would also include if she's called to testify or subpoenaed throughout it. She would be under this agreement an independent contractor, so she wouldn't be entitled to any vacation time. She'd be treated like a 1099 employee. She'd have to pay her own taxes, and she's also required to provide her own general liability insurance. And she would not be able to get any sick time or vacation added to her years of service at the authority. Happy to answer any questions, but pretty straightforward agreement. It did take a little bit of time, so.
Questions for John? Mr. Steen?
Maybe not on the contract, but, well, I do have one on the contract. The termination, 30-day notice, that's at any time in this contract from February throughout. So the
That's
first
correct.
6 months are also, okay. And then I do have a question, maybe more so for the chair versus John. It's not a legal question, it's simply an operating question at some point. But if there's more questions for John, I'll wait. That's my question.
Any other questions for Mr. Shockley? Commissioner Kolpak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. Shockley. My question is, excuse me, after August 1st, it would be an hourly basis of $130 an hour. If something were to come up where there was an unknown issue that would require much more time than the 12 to 15 hours expected a week at the $12,000 flat rate per month, is there a consideration or a conversation we should think about? I'm sorry, we're getting really bad
We got
feedback
some
here.
background.
Someone needs to mute their mic.
Thank you. Is that a concern where maybe we would have a cap on hours after August 1st per month so that we have some control over the $130, which I know is actually less when you calculate the anticipated, even at the high end, 15 hours a week per month, that equals about $200 an hour at the anticipated number of hours. Am I making sense here? Mr. Chair? Mr. Shockley?
Commissioner,
Yes.
Commissioner Kolpak, great question. So, absolutely, we do have some control over her services after August 1st, in that she would be receiving direction from the executive director. In the event that there's that much time needed, we could either do an amendment with her or reach some type of other agreement. The 6 months from the team's view is that would be the bulk of what she is performing, and so we don't expect that to occur. That would also give the new executive director some time really to make a determination of if he wants to put somebody new in that position or recalibrate what that position should do. And so this is very much a transitional type of an agreement. But the short answer is we could do an agreement, or the executive director could certainly tell her that, no, we'll have somebody else from the staff performing these services.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and Commissioner Kolpak, I would also add, part of my understanding with the discussions is if she was subpoenaed, had to go to court, that would be an hourly rate starting in August for any court time.
Thank you.
Commissioner Steen?
Sure. Just a couple of questions. So what is her current salary? It's not a trick question, just.
Director Steen,
Yes.
I don't quote me as 100% accurate, but I believe it is approximately 190 to 195,000.
Okay.
I don't know precisely what the amount is,
I'm
but
not
it is.
I'm not going to quote you because Robert seems to be digging it up here, so I'll wait till Robert has an answer on that. If that's okay, Mr. Chair. It's probably in that compensation study. Mr. Wilson, I have another question on the compensation study, so you may as well pull that up as well. To break the awkward silence, just a question. I think there was a table, Mr. Wilson, that actually compared the ranges with the current compensation for each individual as a summary. I don't have it in front of me, otherwise I would have the information, but
Presuming the information will be forthcoming shortly, what is the question that
well,
pertaining
the
to?
question is this I believe it's less than the calculated amount here on an hourly basis of $400 and some odd thousand a year. If we look at an hourly basis, 250 an hour, anywhere from $200 to $250 an hour. And so why do we go from a compensation study that says something significantly less than that to a base compensation that averages out to be over $400,000 a year? Granted, there's no benefits. I don't think our benefits add up to quite that difference. But what's the justification for that? That's all I'm getting at. I get the $130 an hour, maybe somewhere in that range, but
Well, I will let Mr. Shockley add his thoughts, but mine would be is that the individual left and is now coming back with services that are high value for the project, given her tenure in the lands. And with a consulting arrangement, I think that was where the negotiation came to conclusion with this proposal, based on the competency and the additional work through July that would be required to get us further down the line. And so it's a very specialized area. I think we all recognize that.
Yep,
And so,
I recognize that.
In a negotiation process, if you have that knowledge, you have
So-
that to bring to the table, and we have, the need to finalize this. And Mr. Shockley, anything to add to that?
Yeah, the other thing I would add, Chair, is that she is taking the risk that there's more time than she's estimating per month involved. And so if it takes her 25 hours a week, that is the risk that she's taking on by accepting a flat fee. And knowing the unpredictable nature of the negotiations process, there could be 2 or 3 weeks in which she's spending a significant more amount of time than her estimated amount, while some other weeks she might be spending less. And this was really kind of the idea behind doing a flat fee for 6 months until the authority could really potentially get its own employee up to speed to cover these services.
So that's one of my follow-up questions, but
Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Chair, Director Steen, to answer your question, I apologize for not having that tip of my fingers when you asked the question, but the current salary for the Director of Lands position is $194,593.
and under the compensation study, what was that base amount that we came up with? At level 3, or where we pegged everybody, I think at level 3, correct?
There
Step
are
three.
there are a number of points.
I think step 3 is where we kind of pegged everybody out when we take on the analysis, if I'm not mistaken. So just give us step 3, because you got that down.
The 50th percentile on the published data on that position was $171,920.67.
Thanks for the cents. All right.
Further questions?
Yeah, I just, and Chairman Grinberg, just take off of what you're suggesting there. And I agree. I've worked with Jody. I think she's got great skills. I'm not kind of complaining about working with Jody at all. We do a compensation study that says, here's what somebody in that position is worth based upon our compensation study. And then because they're leaving, then they become worth a lot more. And I just have a hard time transitioning with that issue. It's like, so if this, and your comments were, she's got great skills, this is where we're going, we've got all these issues she's got to deal with, and it's worth it, it's worth the compensation that we're paying her. But then why does the compensation study come back and say it's 173,000 is what the 50 percentile is? I'm just having a hard time reconciling the $250 an hour to whatever $190,000 relates to. It's kind of an effort and time basis, that's all. And I get it. She's leaving. We need somebody in that place so she becomes more valuable. So my follow-up question would be, are we looking to replace her in that position, or are we just going to basically, because we're towards the end of this land acquisition thing, we're just going to ride this to the end until we don't really need a land manager at that level anymore?
My opinion is I don't think we have an answer for that yet.
Okay.
I think time has to progress to a point where we're at with that activity. And also with Mr. Benson starting this week as the director, what are the future needs as we transition from construction to operations and maintenance and duties? And so I really think we need to look to our new executive director some point down the road to come back with those answers.
I agree.
Commissioner Campbell?
Thank you. I think one of the things that we need to be understanding here is her knowledge in the eminent domain process. And I think what was talked about here is she is here for the purpose of fulfilling out some of those eminent domain. And she spent a significant amount of time on those already. And I think she's got, with her experience, she's also got attorneys on the counter side of us also respect her in this process. I've come to learn that in meeting with those attorneys. So yeah, it might be a little bit high, but I just think it's the right thing to do.
Mayor Carlson?
Thank you, Chair Grunberg. I just wanted to make a statement that thank you, Mr. Shockley, for clarifying the fact that the 6-month period of time, even though it states in the contract it would be 12 to 15 hours a week, I anticipate that Jody would be spending a significant amount of time. There's probably going to be most of those weeks that she's going to be spending, 25, 30, 35. I know that there are some days that when she is in some of these negotiations, she's working till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, trying to get these negotiations across the finish line. I would probably have much higher concerns if the hours per week were capped at that 15 hours, considering the cost that we would be paying her, but knowing the amount of work that she's going to need to be doing in the next 6 months, I almost feel bad for her other job because she's going to be taking a lot of time spending it with our staff and working on the diversion project.
Commissioner Kolpak?
Yeah, just a follow-up comment as well. Thank you. I appreciate the conversation and the questions. The fact that the first 6 months are capped makes me much more comfortable. This seems almost like a hybrid negotiated contract. And then knowing that if there is a lot more work after the 6 months at that hourly fee, we have an opportunity to change course. I'm comfortable with the contract.
Mr. Chair.
I think Mr. Steen, then Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you. Well, my question accomplished its goals. We had some discussion on it, which is what I wanted to do. I don't think we should go ahead and just routinely just approve these agreements without some type of discussion. So I appreciate the discussion. And that was my whole goal for this. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Campbell?
I just want to also state that her work on previously settled cases means a lot. And that historical knowledge on what we have done and what we have approved through negotiations is extremely important, because that also needs to be taken into consideration on every future one that we do. And she's got that knowledge and that ability, and it really brings an extra asset to any negotiations that we have.
Is there a motion?
So moved for approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll have Don take the roll.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mr. Brightling.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Yes.
Mr. Ettinger.
Yes.
Ms. Kolpak.
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Capitan.
Aye.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
And Ms. Morgan.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you. Next meeting is February 27th. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We're adjourned.